Hey everyone, my name is Mohammed and I'm your host for Freelance Canada, a show about what it's really like to freelance in Canada. Each week, I interview Canadian freelancers and industry experts as they get candid about the ever-challenging, always exciting, and sometimes hilarious aspects of freelancing. On the show today, I'm going to talk to Annie Chu. Annie is the founder of the culinary travel blog Chu on This, for which she has received the highest recognition for food writing in Canada when she was named Taste Canada Awards Shortlisted Author in 2017. Annie is also a professional development lawyer with the Advocate Society, a not-for-profit and Canada's premier advocacy skills training provider. Today, Annie and I talk about how Canadian freelancers can develop better negotiation skills and get comfortable making it a part of their client engagement process. So let's get to it.
I'm excited for this.
Awesome. Well, given I've been sharing what I do, I'd love to know what you do as a freelancer.
My freelance hat is mostly in the form of my work through my culinary travel blog called Chu on This. And my last name is Chu, C-H-U, so it is a pun. And how it started was I went to France as an exchange student in 2008, and everyone and their grandma at the time were just starting blogs, and I thought I would jump on the bandwagon, even though the only people who read my blog at the time were my parents when I forced them to. But over the years, I realized that culinary culture is something that I'm very passionate about. And I'm definitely not a professional chef, but learning about people through food is a great way to get to know people. It's a great way to encourage me to work on my photography, work on my writing, which are skills that I've always been developing throughout my life. And it's allowed me to also run something on the side alongside my career in law. So the freelance work as a digital creator, blogger, whatever the title is throughout the years that it's changed, that's what it is. It's under the brand of Chu on This, and whatever I feel like doing at the time and whatever people want to see, or I hope they want to see.
I have to say that when I saw your handle and your website, I was like, oh my God, that is so good.
Thanks.
And I feel like your last name might have influenced that food aspect. I don't know. You know how like sometimes people's names just sort of like someone's last name is, let's say, Law, and they just happen to go into law. It's
Oh, exactly. I went to high school with a guy named Will Sue.
Oh, no.
He didn't unfortunately become a lawyer, but he thought very hard about that career choice just for the namesake.
So, speaking of law, what does a professional development lawyer do?
That's a good question. So I would say that my job is 50% law, 50% education. I work for a not-for-profit organization called the Advocate Society, and essentially we're a membership-based organization, over 6,000 lawyers, judges from across Canada, mostly in Toronto, I'll be honest. And we work together to create advocacy training, develop policy, and really teach lawyers the skills that they need to learn throughout their practice that they didn't learn in law school. And we have a pretty strict responsibility as lawyers to continuously learn and grow as the law changes, as your practice changes. So that's what I do, and I really love it. It allows me to stay connected to the legal world, but be in education, be doing work where people are sending me emails thanking me instead of saying, I hate you. Although, you know, there's a lot of benefits to private practice as well, I won't lie. And I do miss the courtroom time and, you know, some of the really cool negotiation work that we get to do in that capacity. But I'm definitely very happy in my current position.
And in terms of starting freelancing, it seemed it was more so that you started writing a blog, and it was at a time when you were in France, if I recall correctly.
That's right.
And so at what point was it just more so that, hey, I am, creating content and I'm just writing about things I like as I see everyone around me is doing it, to more so like, oh no, this is something that I could actually turn into a side hustle or something I can do as my creative output or just as a way to generate additional revenue for myself?
I think it was coming to Toronto for law school when I realized how things were changing. When I went to school for university, I was in Ottawa at the time. And after I came back with the blog, I was just blogging about a few restaurants I was going to, and just some small, food festivals. But Toronto is a very competitive market. And I think I'm sure you know this, it really forced me to look at myself and say, what do I have that's different? And over the years, the industry has also changed so much. So I couldn't have monetized it if everyone didn't also want to participate in this change. What do they say? The rising tide lifts all boats. It really came about together. At first, it started with being invited to a media event and realizing, oh, great, you can get a meal without, and I hate it when people call it like, oh, it's a free meal, because it's not really a free meal. It's a mutual,
exchange,
mutually beneficial exchange. Exactly. And then the industry started to change where they were seeking out specific people to help promote specific things. And I realized that not a lot of people are writing long form blog posts. Not everybody is in photography. Not everybody, wants to do what I do. And when you realize that there is a lot of value to be created through making content on social media, then you can start working together to see how it can be mutually beneficial.
I was going through your Instagram feed, and I think it was one of your recent posts, which was about Italian bread masterclass. Mm-hmm. Did you take classes for your calligraphy and for the illustration? Because I was looking at it and I was like, wow, that could be something you sell on Etsy and people would totally buy it.
Oh, thanks. I haven't taken any classes, but I definitely have had a passion for calligraphy and art for a long time. And I've also been working on like a stationary greeting card business alongside this Chew on This brand. So yeah, that's kind of what's in the works at the moment. Spoiler alert. Well, it's basically just, in freelancing, you have to not just do what you're passionate about, but you also have to think about what other people want, what the world needs, what can make you money, and what you're actually skilled at. And not all of those 4 things or 5 things can come together in many ways. Like, for example, I do love cooking, but I'm not, like I said, I'm not a professional chef. So I would never be selling food to people, even though I love it, because I just don't have that skill to that level. But I have found recently that with art and the kind of things that I do, people have been responding really well to it. And I said, okay, well, I think that kind of fits all the criteria.
And these greeting cards, I assume will be food-based or have food-based puns on them?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Okay.
There's a lot of food and food-adjacent content.
Amazing. I think one of the best cards that I received was from my realtor a few years back. First in my family to buy a place in Canada after only some years ago. Before that, to be broken homeless. So it was quite the shift. And he got to experience through that, because after I bought the place, I brought my mom up and she thought she was just checking out the place with me and the realtor, not knowing that I had bought the place. So when I told her, I was like, oh, what do you think? Thankfully, she said she really liked the place. If she said she did, it would have been awkward. But so yeah, like told her and she's like, oh my God, she's like crying and excited. And my realtor's like, what is going on? It's like, oh yeah, she didn't know about the place. And he's like, oh, I have never been part of this experience. Anywho, later he got me a bottle of whiskey and a greeting card. And the greeting card was so cool because it was a photo of a crib. And it's like, hope you enjoy your new crib. So the play on to the crib, but also the fact that my house is called a crib. And I just thought that's such a punny, but also funny greeting card that I remember it so well. So I'm so excited to see what your greeting cards end up being.
Oh, that's such a sweet story. It's so good to hear things like that. And that greeting cards are making a comeback and an impression.
Yes. Like, oh my God. I've tried to find greeting cards where we're going on a tangent. That's completely okay. Or I am going on a tangent. But I totally believe that greeting cards are going to come back, I think, because we still want to be connected. And because we're not going to the office anymore or being able to socialize, at least in person, as much, even being able to like send something tangible so you still have that feeling,
exactly,
that texture on your fingers and having that note, I just feel that's going to enable us to find new ways, or I guess resurface old ways to still remain connected and know that, you know, there's somebody out there who's thinking of us. So I'm super excited for these greeting cards to come out.
Well, you'll be the first to know, I guess. You already know.
Yeah. I mean, once this podcast comes out, people will also know. So I'm excited for that nonetheless. In terms of freelancing, when I reached out to you, I think one of the topics that you had picked out was negotiating. And I thought that was such a great topic to cover because so many times, at least with freelancers that I've spoken to, is that there's always this guilt or this imposter syndrome that's associated with negotiating. It's like, oh no, I don't want to negotiate because I might lose the client, or I might look like I'm being difficult, or that it may not work out in my benefit as a whole, right? Mm-hmm. But there's clear value in negotiating, especially ensuring that you maintain your value. So perhaps maybe we can dive into this by getting a better sense of what are some of the biggest mistakes freelancers make when they're negotiating.
Yeah, so this is, as a freelancer, being a lawyer definitely comes into play with this, because if we didn't negotiate everything, we wouldn't have a job as a lawyer. So that's a mentality. And the other mentality is that negotiation doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. In negotiation theory, we often talk about the pie and integrative versus distributive techniques. If you have a pie, you don't always have to just cut it into half, or, you know, you're going to get 40%, I'm going to get 60% of this pie. There's ways to metaphorically expand the pie that gives you different options. I think if we're talking about biggest mistakes, it's coming into it thinking that there's only room to lose and gain certain things. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to be negotiating with other parties, with companies, with people, it really is about hoping that the two parties want to come together to get a desired result that is mutually beneficial. That's like the big thing to start thinking about. Like, negotiation isn't a bad word. It's just a process.
That's I would say more some shift in your mindset.
That's right. Yeah.
Because a lot of times, at least I suppose, even when I've in the past thought about negotiation, I've always thought it's like, okay, what am I going to get and where is it my ground, rather than how do I like have this conversation with a person and then both come to a mutual conclusion.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to share like a little example that's thrown around in the negotiation theory world about the two sisters with the orange. There's a fight between two sisters because there's only one orange and they both need it. And at the end of the day, because they weren't really negotiating well, they walked away with neither of them having the orange, or only one of them having the orange and the other one being bitter till the end. But really, what the two sisters didn't realize, if they had only started the conversation, was that one needed the juice to make her recipe, and then the other one just needed the zest. So if they had opened up, instead of with their positions, as in I need one orange, but talked about what interest they had, they could have both walked away with 100% of what they needed. There's a lot of negotiation theory in the floating around, but a lot of these concepts come from a book called Getting to Yes by Fisher and Urey. And I always come back to that orange example because it applies to so many different things that we negotiate for in our lives.
I love that example. That's so good. And it's so visual and tangible. And actually kind of perfect given your food interests. I'm actually quite taken back by how simple but good of a example that is to talking about negotiating. At the same time, what has been your process for negotiating with clients or helping other people think about negotiating with their clients?
Most of the time, like especially with freelancers who are, we're talking to freelancers who at least are somewhat established. So people are reaching out to them with offers, with deals. I always, from my side, think about them as their interests, and I'll just use myself as an example. I usually get approached with sponsorship deals for social media, blog content. Sometimes there's travel opportunities to go certain places and write about amazing locations. I want to think about what they're trying to do, not what the price they're putting on something, but what is their goal? Like, are they trying to promote a certain product, trying to get as many people to purchase it? Or are they just trying to get exposure? Are they trying to elevate the brand? Are they trying to encourage certain people to just get a good feeling? Like, there's so many different ways that people are using social media to get something across, right? And what you need to do in order to get that information is to ask. It's that simple. A lot of times people come in, they think a big company is coming in to say, I want you to post a picture and I'm going to pay you $100 to do it. Then the influencer, content creator, what have you, says, oh my gosh, is $100 too much, too little? What is it? Usually it's too little. And then they freak out because they don't have enough information to go by. They don't actually know what is expected of them, how much time it's going to take. They don't know what the going rate is. And spoiler alert, there is no such thing as a going rate because you are your own person. Your photography style, your audience, the added value that you can bring to something is unlike anyone else's, right? And then they usually struggle and write back, okay, but if I'm asking for 150, I'm asking for 500. Is that crazy? But really the conversation, the first email you respond to someone should be, I would love to know more about what you're looking for to see if we can work together. To find out maybe their goals are completely misaligned. I guess I'll share a story of how, like a perfect example of this in the food blogging world. There was a company that reached out to several food bloggers, myself included, with a general proposal saying that they wanted someone to promote a product through a series of classes. And hypothetically, maybe this was the budget that they had to work with. It was a very objectively low number. And there are food bloggers who talk, and there was a huge discussion about it in a Facebook group forum. And I was very shocked that no one had even bothered to ask what was actually involved. And even now, and I can't reveal who was involved in this, but my approach to this situation was I wrote back to ask, what are you actually hoping to achieve? And once we established a relationship and talked about all the different opportunities, I realized that number that they had thought of, it was just random. It wasn't even based on anything. So once I got all the information about what kind of classes they were thinking of, what kind of time frame they had to work with, their goal of promoting the products in a certain way, I came back with a proposal that I felt was very fair to what I wanted to do for them. And it gave them a lot more value that they weren't even expecting, such as I have a bit of a graphic design background, so I designed menus and recipe sheets that you could use as handouts. I wanted to do blog posts, but I also wanted to do Instagram live videos and stories. I also have a network of people who I could share this product with. So just like a very creative way that worked for me personally. And they were super happy. I was super happy. We negotiated a price that we both thought was great. And we've continued the relationship ever since. And it all started with just understanding what it was that the other person wanted to do. And that's unfortunately something that a lot of people in the food blogger industry just seem very hesitant to do.
I think what I've really loved about that story is that yes, you went back and you try to understand what it is that the client is hoping to accomplish and even how they got to that price point. I think what the other thing that's even more important is that you didn't just turn around and said, okay, yeah, like this is what you want, this is what my price is. Instead, you're like, hey, these are your larger objectives. And instead of just looking at me as somebody who's posting something, maybe one post and whatnot, it's like, hey, I have all these other skill sets that I can also bring to the table. And through that, make something that feels a lot more authentic to what I do and how I'm viewed, while also ensuring that you get to accomplish the business objectives you're setting out to achieve, right? So I really like that.
Yeah, and I just hope that more people can feel the confidence to know themselves. Like that's what the heart of all of this is, negotiation. You really have to know yourself, what you're comfortable with, what you're offering. You're not gonna, I know a lot of people are out there searching, what is the average rate that an influencer charges for X? There's just, that's not helpful information, to be honest.
So with that, how can freelancers develop better negotiation skills?
So a little bit of research out there is definitely okay in terms of just seeing who else is doing similar things to what you're doing, just to know the market, not to know exactly what they're being paid, but just to get a feeling. There are a lot of good negotiation books out there, are in different domains like that I told you about getting to yes, but negotiation is a skill to be learned and it's a theory, and there are a lot of interesting different theories that have been developed over the years. But a huge part is familiarizing yourself with all of the different aspects of it. You have to figure out, what does the other party want? What do you want? And one of the tips that is it seems a little bit daunting, but it's actually not, is developing negotiation plans. Just like you would if you were going into a job interview, you have your resume, you had your cover letter from before, you plan out what you're going to wear, you plan out maybe some of the questions that the company would say. Think about going into a negotiation the same way you would for a job interview. And in that negotiation plan, in addition to the positions or interests that you have for both or multiple parties, you also want to know a couple of important things, like, what is your bottom line or reservation point? If you're reading an email and someone says, I'm offering you $100 to do X, and that already seems insane, maybe that's your reservation point, right? But between your reservation point and the other party's reservation point, that is the zone of possible agreement. And you might not know this from a first email or a second email, but once you kind of get to know what the interests are, as we kind of just said, then that zone will become clearer and clearer, and you can develop a plan that focuses around that. And walk in with the list of possible options. Like I was saying before, if you have a graphic design background, if you have a really strong writing skill set, if your photography is good, if you can do video, like if you can do video with drones, like sometimes people don't even think about that as a possibility. And you're sitting here being like, oh yeah, I can shoot video like in 4K, no problem. They haven't even thought about that. But if you put that on the table as an item, as part, like, that you can offer in your final agreement, you're really expanding the pie, so to speak. So you have to walk into this negotiation process with a plan. And the plan, back when I was in law school working in our negotiation classes, I would literally come up with like 5-page documents and be like, here's one party, here's the other party, here's what they want. This is what I think they want. This is what I think their reservation point is. It could be this, it could be that. Right. If it's this, maybe it's that. And I would draw pictures, of course, because now that's kind of my thing. I would literally draw a pie and be like, okay, this is probably what they're thinking, but who knows? Like developing plans in whatever way, is comfortable to you. And then once you read more, once you have that experience, once you have a few emails that you've seen, oh, that was a terrible thing I wrote, but this one's better. You develop basically a negotiation arsenal and a process that you just get better and better at. Right.
I love your idea about also not just having a plan, but then, or the initial plan, but then to like invert it and see what could go wrong or what could maybe not work, and then come up with a plan for that plan or for that objection or argument, whatever you want to call it. So it's essentially not just being surface level, but going a little bit deeper to sort of challenge your own self to flush out the thinking around each of the potential talking points or negotiation points.
Yeah, and one other dorky negotiation terminology I'll throw in there is called a BATNA, which stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. And it's something I'm so in awe that more people don't think about, because you can always walk away. But in order to walk away, you have to know what you're walking away from and into. Like a person to really visualize, because I used to do family law. A lot of people think about like, oh, I'll have to stay with this person because if I'm not with this person, then I'm with no one. It's like, well, you're not with no one. You're with yourself, and you're not with this person who you think sucks. You get to be free. You get to explore other options. That's your best alternative. Your best alternative, especially when we're talking about negotiating marriage contracts. Mm-hmm. Like we've actually had clients walk away from that because they said, oh my God, I'm never going to get to a point in this marriage contract where I'm actually happy. Then you maybe have to reconsider if you even want to be in the marriage. But I digress. But that idea can also be applied to anything you negotiate as a freelancer. So if you're negotiating a contract, you have to know what the option is. So maybe you're in a situation with a client that is your dream client and you're basically willing to do it for free. Then you know that whatever offer they give you, even like you're going to try to get the best thing that you can, but you're willing to, if you're willing to accept it for free, you might be willing to accept their final offer for half the monetary value you were hoping for, because your alternative is not working with this brand that you love. Mind you, if everything else is fine, right? Like if, they're not forcing you to do anything you don't want to, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But if you're negotiating, say, with a brand that, you could work with, you don't have to work with, they're okay, then if they're offering you something that is way less than what you were hoping for, then your alternative is to walk away with the free time and with the energy to do something else that might be a better fit. So a lot of people forget about that other part, that best alternative, and it's very important so that you can feel comfortable walking away, and you can also feel very comfortable with accepting a negotiation if it comes to completion.
And let's say the freelancer has gone ahead, they've done the negotiation. What other consideration should freelancers keep in mind, maybe even while they're negotiating?
So this one, I'll say like the two parts of this question. One part is just that it's not always just I do X, you give me Y. You have to think about on the monetary side. And I know with Benji, like you have to think about tax implications of things, right? Including like, what can I write off as a business expense?
A lot.
But people always forget about tax implications. That can make a big difference. It can really make or break an agreement if you're talking about big numbers. But you also have to think about how are you if you were drafting a settlement agreement, you're not a lawyer, but you're just like, would I and the other person walk away at the end of this conversation and write down the same thing on paper? If so, what would that involve? Who's going to start? What's the timeline? What is the copyright implications of this? If you're producing something for someone, do they get ownership of it? Do you get to still use it?
Right.
Is it a legal binding agreement, or is it just something kind of casual you guys worked out? Are you able to share about it on social media? Are you able to profit from a relationship in the future? Are you going to be an ambassador for this company? Is this client going to work with you again? Just as much as nobody likes to think about the legalities of things, you have to put on a bit of a lawyer hat and think from a contract perspective, from a settlement perspective, what else am I missing? And by the way, there are lawyers who can help you with this. I would say that's one side of the coin on that. Right. The other side, which I'm very passionate about, because I think it's something we all need to pay more attention to, is whether or not there are any unconscious biases at play, any cultural differences, any national differences, because words have a lot of meaning and people see things differently depending on their background and the viewpoint that they have. For example, like the word compromise has both a positive and a negative meaning in the English language, but in Persian, that's not the case. Like compromise only has a weak, you're giving things up, you're compromising your integrity, that kind of compromise. It doesn't have a coming to a win-win situation context. And that has created some tension between nations in the past, or in Chinese culture. And I've worked a lot with Asia as well because I'm originally from Taiwan. The concept of trust, there's many definitions of trust in terms of relational trust, in terms of trust in an agreement, in a system. And sometimes you just won't know what you don't know. But if a gut feeling is telling you something, like if you're face to face with someone and their eye contact isn't what you intended when you said something, it's always worth it to, as politely as you can, look into it to see if there was a misunderstanding. And sometimes it's just, two people from different countries negotiating something, but sometimes it can be pretty serious when you have a power imbalance. And sometimes you can't help it, but you have to know if you want to walk away because something is unconscionable, someone's not treating you well, someone is using you for your skills, taking advantage of you being a freelancer and not having a company usually to fall on. You have to know when you either have to walk away or ask for help or find another way to manage the situation when you have a gut feeling that something's not right.
I think you've touched on two things that I'd like to get a better understanding of. First one being, you mentioned there are plenty of lawyers. Typically, when most of us Google law firm or lawyer, the big law firms of Toronto, at least, show up on the map. I'm curious to know how people can find maybe not so big law firm lawyers that are more accessible, especially to self-employed professionals.
Well, you can always reach out to me. I'll be happy to refer you to people I know and trust. It is unfortunate because there's a lot of marketing bucks that are spent on getting the bigger firms to the top.
Right.
The Law Society of Ontario does have a referral service. So if you Google Law Society of Ontario, you can find that and they'll try their best to help you find someone. But unfortunately, some of the good lawyers who are also, affordable, you kind of have to find them through word of mouth. But I am happy to help.
Perfect. And the second question or point that I wanted to understand a little bit more, you touched on it before, and perhaps we can dive into it just a little bit more, is there a time when it doesn't make sense to negotiate?
Definitely. I'm thinking about the photographer in particular in this instance. A lot of people do not value or cannot understand the difference in someone who's in their first year of university versus a photographer who is like Annie Leibovitz, for example. It's a photo, right? You take a photo. So people try to negotiate with photographers all the time. Mm-hmm. And I know that they struggle a lot with their pricing. I think if you have a certain confidence in your work and you have set prices for very specific categories of work, you should stick to them unless there is a special circumstance where someone's either giving you value or you're doing something charitable that would allow you to bring down your price. That's like one major scenario. Like when you're doing something like photography, when your services are pretty fixed, it's different when you're creating a project like with food bloggers and stuff where who knows what's going to come out the other side. It's more if you think that the negotiation process compromises your integrity, you do not have to. You can always politely say, you know, this is like a fixed price thing, just like it would be for a mango in the supermarket was the first fruit I could think of, or going to get your hair cut, right? Like it's a service you're providing. It's a good you're providing. You don't have to negotiate if it's pretty fixed. On the other hand, if you have a scenario, like I said, when you feel that other party is taking advantage of you, whether it's obvious in terms of they're saying, here, please do this for us, we'll give you exposure, and they've kind of like tried to hide the fact that there's no monetary value in something.
Right.
Or when you, like I said, get a gut feeling that it's not right, you can always walk away. There is no reason you should ever enter into something as a freelancer when there is nothing to be gained and so much to be lost.
Yes. I don't think I can add anything more. I'm just going to be quiet. So as we wrap up, I'd love to know, what advice do you have for Canadian freelancers?
Well, one note that covers a lot of what we talked about is the importance of knowing yourself and maintaining professionalism. Dress the way you want people to see you and negotiate in the way you want people to see you. Know your value, but be willing to be open-minded within that realm. Know what's out there, but don't listen to everything just because someone else is doing it. And always be armed with more than enough information to the extent that you can find it. Because as cheesy as it is, information is power. And there's no such thing as failure when you're a freelancer. Everything's a learning experience. So just take it with a grain of salt. If a negotiation fails, that's okay. It just means you have more time to explore your alternatives, or it's a learning experience for you to do better at your next one.
Well, thank you so much, Annie. I'd love to know where people can find out more about you and your work online.
I am usually at Chu on this blog on Instagram. Again, that's Chu, spelled like my last name, CHU, on this blog. And the website is www.chuonthis.ca. And you can find everything there, including all the information about the other work that I have. But that's kind of the central hub.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity to learn from you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Right. I'm super excited for these greeting cards. Especially ones with the rice. They're essentially like a triangle. It's a rice with the seaweed.
Oh, the onigiri.
Onigiri, yes. Oh my god. Anything to do with onigiris or sushi. Just putting in, making requests. Just making requests here, okay?
Okay. Awesome. I have noted. I have noted your request, and I will try my best to fulfill it.
Perfect. Well, that's our show for today. If you liked Freelance Canada, then be sure to subscribe to our newsletter by visiting freelancecanada.fm. You'll get access to all of my personal notes, as well as book recommendations about the topic discussed in the episode. Now, you will not find any of this on our website, so be sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss out. As with most podcasts, you can listen to every episode through Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It would mean a lot if you could leave us a 5-star review. It would mean even more if you shared our podcast with another freelancer so it can help them in their journey too. Finally, if you're tired of leaving money on the table because you don't know which of your expenses you can write off, then sign up for Benji. You can start your 90-day free trial by visiting betterwithbenji.com. Because freelance life is better with Benji. Thanks for listening.